let's review this game. So the game started with Caro-Kann. This is mainline variation. Bishop f5, 93. So far so good. So all of these are book moves. So sometimes white could play h4, and then we could play h6. I mean, after knight f6, of course. So white will push the pawn to h5 before trading the bishop. But during this game, white didn't play that. So actually, I would like to pushing the h pawn if I would play as white, because I can expand my space at the king side. So knight d3, exchange. Yeah, we can do that. We can take the bishop, but the question is, can we do that later? So for example, can we move the pawn to e6? The question is, do we worry about the white bishop taking our bishop? I don't think so, because after the trade, we open up this h file. So I think this exchange favors black. And the thing is, when we start the trade, both sides lose the bishop, and the only difference between this position, first of all, two bishops are removed. Another difference is white developed the queen. So the point is, after trading the bishop, we make the white queen to a better position. So that's the reason I don't really like to trading the bishop for now. We can hold on a little bit if we have to. So we can play e6, and if I play h4 to like threatening h5, you know what? When the bishop at d3, h5 is not as scary as there's no bishop here, because if you move knight, keep developing pieces like h5, then we can exchange pieces, and white move the pawns, and meanwhile we develop our knights and also the pawn. So yes, this is something very subtle and tiny, but I would like to discuss. And also the reason behind is, every time we trade pieces, we need to think about, is there any upside or is there any downside for us? So my opinion is, when we take the bishop, we help the queen develop. So we help our opponent develop pieces. And also, as I said, I like to, sorry, I repeat it another time, for the second time, that is, if white take our bishop, I don't think that's a problem. Even though we have double pawn, we open up this h file. So yeah, so if the exchange doesn't favor us, so we can hold on a bit. So take knight to d7, c3. So c3, well, I was thinking about c4. I think this is better than c3, because after c4, white has a good control of the center, like d5. So c3, e6, bishop to g5, attack the bishop back to e3. I'm curious to know why didn't the bishop move to f4, because clearly bishop f4 is controlling more space, right? Bishop e3, the bishop is blocked by these two pawns, and we can move bishop to d6. Now our bishop is controlling this diagonal, and the castle. Okay, we exchange the bishop with the knight. So this is the second time I would like to highlight exchange here. The same question to us: do we have to trade a bishop with the knight, or does the position favor us after the trade? So let's analyze. So first of all, I think the bishop at d6. First of all, the bishop has two diagonals, very open diagonals to control. So I think the bishop is very active. And the knight as a g3 is not a center knight. I don't think the knight is a good knight. Yeah, I mean, we can leave it as it is. I mean, if we want to trade the knight, we can do that later. So we don't have to do it immediately. I don't see any extra value from this trading. And maybe you could argue after the trade, maybe white take that with the h pawn, there's a double pawn, but I don't think this double pawns are weak, at least at this stage. It's hard for us to attack these 2 pawns because the king side is quite closed. And also, I think my main point is I think the bishop is way better than knight, the d6 bishop, because it has control a lot more space than the knight. And once we remove the dark square bishop, our dark squares will be weak because our opponent has a dark square bishop. So we should keep the bishop at the board, at least at this position. And we can treat the knight if we want to at a later stage. So for example, if white push h pawn, we can treat the knight, and after white take the pawn. So I mean, if white take the pawn and this pawn at the h4, this is something I would consider trading the knight because I have an outpost at the g4, and this is some extra value. So let me move that clearly. So if white play h4, let's say now it's black move, I would just castle. So now I think trading the knight is something I would consider. Maybe that's not the best move, but this is something I would consider because trading the knight, the g4 square is the outpost. This is something like some extra benefit I will get after this trading. I admit that the bishop is still better than the knight, but after trade, we have this double pawn, and more importantly, I have a very good square for the knight. And this g3 square is a weakness. I can attack that. It's unlike the pawn at h2. If we take the knight, the g3 pawn is still solid. We cannot attack that. So this is some tiny things I would like to compare. And once again, before we trade pieces, ask ourselves, does this trade or favor us or favor our opponent? The second question, do we have to trade these 2 pieces at this position? Can we do that later? Okay. So after the trade, white take that with the the f pawn. This is interesting. I will take that with the h pawn because I don't know. I have a reason for sure. I mean, I know because the f pawn is closer to the center. I think the reason maybe white want to open up this f file. This is the reason I could think about. So knight d5, knight is at center, rook d1, knight f6, knight e5. So rook f8 is was that a misclick? Do we want to long castle? Do we want to short castle but move the rook first? Oh, maybe we want to long castle, so we move the rook. Okay. So the question is long castle really better than short castle? I mean, if we short castle, first of all, we make the king safe just in one move. And we might worry a little bit about the safety of the king side, but at the same time, I think we are still quite safe. We have these 2 knights connected. The knight control a lot of great space at the king side, and also these 4 pawns are very solid. This pawn structure is low but solid. So yeah, I mean, if we have the queen at c7, I will castle to the queen side. But if we need to use extra move like rook f8 to protect the pawn and then long castle, I think it's not worth it. This is my idea. So rook f8, a3. I think if I would play white, I would play bishop d2 and then kick our knight. So white will have very good control at the center. Yeah, I think a3, white is preparing for b4, b5 maybe. Knight d7. Take, queen queen e4. So now it's a time we should trade the bishop, to be honest, because as I said, the dark square bishop can utilize our dark squares since we don't have dark square bishop. And very soon after bishop d2 and c4, our knight will be kicked away from the center. So which means our knight will lose this very good square. And so we should trade with the bishop. So yeah, so this is another time we ask ourselves, does this trade favor us? I think yes, because as I said, the dark squares will be weak if we remain the bishop for our opponent. And another thing is, after bishop d2 and c4, our knight will be kicked from the center. So our knight is expected to be placed at the square less good as for now. So I would trade bishop, otherwise I don't have a chance. Long castle c4. So if I play with white, I will move the bishop first and then c4. So c4, yeah, trade the knight, trade the bishop, that's good. That's really good. So the position become equalized again. White is slightly better because white rooks are more like active. Our rook is a little bit passive and the white has control, like good control of the center. But it's quite close. So the next question is, how can we keep moving pieces? For example, how can we make these two rooks active? So hopefully we can create some pawn break at e5 to exchange with the d4 pawn, open at e5. This is something we can try. So we get the queen c7, rook e8, f6, and e5. This is something I will strive for. So okay, so king b8. So if we look at the clock, so white has 40 minutes on the clock, black has 52. So in my opinion, I don't think black has spent as much time as possible as its opponent. So it's not hard to find there is a fork after queen e5. And once again, dark squares, queen e5, you see, dark squares is our weakness because we trade the d6 bishop earlier. So everything is connected now. So queen, I think we should spend much more time. We spent like 1 minute, made the move queen b8, and we lost a pawn. And then our position is so bad because once the queen at g2, the h6 will be captured, f7 is under attack. So why is queen c7 a good move? Because it guards these dark squares. It's very good, it's very lucky that the dark square e3 bishop is gone, so we can defend this dark square with our queen. And we can move the queen to b8 if we want to, but I think king at c8 is still safe. And maybe I will move the rook to e8 and f6 and e5 to open up the e file for my rooks. And also to release this rook, because the rook has to guard f7. We cannot push f6 for now because e6 is a problem. We have to protect it and push the f6 and later e5. At least that could be my plan. So king b8, queen e5. So you see, so I think white found this opportunity once we moved the rook, but it took white like at least 1 more minute to make the move. So it's good to be cautious if you see some opportunity. We lost the pawn, and white has huge advantage after this move. Queen b6, and b4. White plays very cautiously, didn't even give us a chance to take the b pawn. So now we are trying to attack everything we can, but we also ignore the defense, right? Queen f7, rook f7. So, but yeah, I have to admit that it's also very hard to defend these two pawns. So maybe counter attack is something we can do. Rook f7, take a3. Can we take c4? Attack the rook, attack the pawn. Yeah, so maybe take the a3. We can like disturb the white king, and hopefully you can get a draw. Queen e. Yeah, this is what I said. We can check, and potentially we can offer a trade. The reason we are offering a trade is because first of all, if I take the pawn, we can take d4. And if you take, there's a background checkmate here and here. So yeah, it's safe to take the d4 pawn. And the reason why I offer a trade because white, because if it's rook endings, even though white has up on pawn, it's still tricky for white to win. But if we have queens on the board, it's different. And also, I think white queen is more active than the black queen. And one of the reasons is the black king is kind of exposed. White queen can attack our king in so many ways. And also we have two like isolated pawns. So since we have more weakness, the king, two isolated pawns, so it's good for us to trade the queens. But yeah, let's see. So we take the pawn, queen e3, it's good. Oh, we take the pawn. No, this is a fork. Queen g7. Yeah, you see? We spent less than 20 seconds, or maybe less than 30 seconds to make the move. But we still have like 12 minutes more than our opponent, and our position is worse than our opponent. So we should think carefully to make the decision, especially when we win something. Okay? We win a pawn. It looks like we have opportunity. So this is sometime we need to be cautious. Okay? It's not hard to find the fork. Dark squares. Again, because we have weakness, ducks are our weakness, and we lost a rook. And after losing a rook, I don't think it's necessary to walk through the rest of the game. So, I think the learning for black is, first of all, before trading pieces, before every time we want to trade pieces, our opponent asks two questions to ourselves. First of all, does the trade favor us or favor our opponent? The second one, do we have to trade the pieces right now? If we can do that later, and if trading pieces is not good at this moment, we can wait once the best timing come to us. You see what I mean? And another thing is the time management. Okay, so when we feel like, especially at this position, we feel like we can win something, a pawn, where maybe our opponent is fully to make a mistake, take the rook, and then we can background check. Spend time, okay? Spend time. Maybe there's a trap behind it. So that's it.